So for many people, and most of the times when we say literature review, we look at it in terms of the chapter that we have in our work, which is almost usually a chapter 2. I mean, if you do the monologue kind of thesis, your chapter 1 is probably introduction, your chapter 2 is probably literature review. So once you think about literature review as a chapter in your work, you are thinking about it in terms of the products. But also, it's not just the product, not just the chapter that you present to your supervisors to review, but it's also the processes, every process that you go through in trying to put that product together. And so literature review as a product, you can look at it in terms of the part of the research that makes extensive reference to related research and theory. And so once you say maybe you've written, depending on your level of thesis, maybe you've written a 30-page chapter 2 or a 35-page chapter 2. That is the product of your literature review. But there's also the process, everything that went into coming into developing that 30-page or that 20-page or that 40-page text that you have. And so we have to understand this in 2 ways. And for most of the time, it is the process that leads to the product. So if your understanding of the process is very weak, it goes to suggest that you are not going to come out with any good products of your literature review. And so for most of what the training is going to focus on today, we are going to focus on the process. Because once you understand the process, it means that the product that will come up is going to be a strong one. Now, for a doctorate degree, I mean, for many of us who did first degree projects, we did literature review. At least there was a chapter in literature review. For masters, you did literature review. For PhD, you are doing literature review. But what is the depth of the difference between these levels? Let me use this analogy to try to look at the different levels of depth in the various degree qualifications. Somebody raised a question, what is the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire? And so different people try to look at how to make the difference clear in everyday terms. And so they used seconds to try to know what the difference is. And the idea is that 1 million seconds is equal to 12 days. But 1 billion seconds is equal to 31 years. And so that gives you an idea between a millionaire and a billionaire. And if you go to a trillionaire, 1 trillion seconds is equal to 31,688 years. So you see the difference between a million to a billion and a billion to a trillion is very, very huge. So what that means is that the literature review you do for your first degree, when you're going to do your second degree, the depth is way different. And when you're moving from master's degree to a doctorate degree, the depth of the difference in literature review, it's almost unimaginable. I mean, the depth where you move the discussion to is a whole new level, all right? And so usually when you look at the bachelor's degree, the literature review at the master's first degree, whether it's a BA, BSc, BEd, whether it's public health, usually the literature review at the first degree level tends to be very descriptive. And it focuses on the topic. So let's say somebody is interested in what factors cause depression. And the person has to focus on this person conducted a study in 2021 and he found that maybe heartbreak causes depression. So for first degree, you are basically telling what researchers have researched and what they have found. So you are just kind of describing different studies, really. And so you just describe these studies to justify why you are doing your research. And so for for first degree, literature review is very descriptive. But when you move to the master's degree, then you move from descriptive aspect of literature review, and then you enter into analytical and a summative aspect of literature review. So what that means is that we are not just interested in knowing that this person conducted this study and found these findings. We need a little bit of depth. You would have to speak to methodological issues. Are there methodological issues that perhaps contributed to this? Could the findings be based on the population use? What if that research is done in a different geographical area? What research techniques were employed? And so for master's degree, you have to go a little bit in depth to analyze the studies you are summarizing. So if you're doing literature review and all you are doing is quoting who conducted the study and what a person found, quoting who conducted the study and what a person found, at the first degree level, that can be allowed. Even at the second degree level, that is not acceptable. All right. Now, when you move from the master's degree to a doctorate degree, you enter into a different era of engaging with research works. Here, at the doctorate degree level, literature review, you enter into what we call analytical synthesis. In the master's degree, you are basically doing analytical summation, all right? You are just summarizing papers and combining them where they agree, where they disagree. Basically, that's what you're doing. But at the PhD level, whether you are doing a PhD or a DPhil or a PsyD, there are different kinds of doctorate degrees. But predominantly at the PhD, which I'm sure most of us the participants are doing, you are doing analytical synthesis, but you are doing that to cover almost every known literature in the area you are working in. All right. So when you are working within an area, let's say you are interested in what do you call it? Any topic in mind, maybe financial crisis or maybe a banking crisis. Maybe that's what you are interested in. Basically, okay, somebody says he can't hear anything. Can you hear me, please?
I can. I think it's here. It's here.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I hear you loud and clear.
Oh, okay. In that case, Karen, perhaps you might want to sort out. Your device or your connectivity. Okay, so like I was saying, at the PhD level, what is required of you is a very higher level of conceptual thinking. Conceptual thinking because you are going to step into the field of creating knowledge. And so what is required of you is your ability to pitch knowledges or pitch different literatures among themselves and be able to analyze them. First of all, synthesize everything they are saying. Synthesizing means that you are not just summarizing, but you are also drawing in-depth meanings from what you are doing. And so you have to know the level of the level where you are doing your research and what is required of you. All right. You are also at the doctorate level, you're also going to engage in philosophical discussions. So it's not enough to say that somebody did the research and found that more women report, let's say, depression than men. First degree person can quote this and the person will be allowed. A second degree, you have to go a little bit deeper. Why are women reporting more depression than men? You have to go, but at the doctorate degree level, you are now even going to look at whether or not the way depression is being measured is even the right way to go. Is there a different way depression can be measured? The way depression is measured, is it serving our needs? You are going to do a lot of deeper level analysis of the researches that you are reading. So you are not just interested in the findings. You have to go behind the findings to be able to question what philosophical foundation is pushing this idea, and could they be influencing why the researchers are getting these findings. And so you have to know that at this level, what is required of you is analytical synthesis, conceptual and philosophical conversation within the area where you are working in. And most of you are within the doctorate degree. So that is what you have to understand. Now, let's look at the purpose for doing literature review. Why do you do literature review? I've always explained to people that when you are writing your research, you write your chapter 1 first before your chapter 2 introduction. But you can't write a chapter 1 when you have not advanced in your literature review. You can't write a convincing chapter 1. You have to be well advanced within your literature review before you can actually write a convincing chapter 1. Because your literature review is going to serve purposes that will satisfy, that will appear in every chapter of your work. When you do in-depth literature review, we will see it in your introduction, we will see it in your methodology, we will see it in your findings, we will see it in your discussion, we will see it in your recommendation, we will see it in your policy or your contribution. So even though there's a chapter called literature review, that is not the only place where your literature review is going to appear. So the literature review helps you to achieve like 6 key things. It helps you to achieve a historical context. It helps you to achieve a contemporary context. It helps you to achieve a theoretical, a conceptual, empirical, and a problem justification context. Now let's take each of them and see what it does. So first, let's look at the historical context. At the PhD level, every research is situated within a context which has history. No matter which field you have picked to do your research in, I did my research within community mental health. There's a whole history surrounding community mental health. If you have to situate it into how mental health started globally, how it was moved, how it was being treated by religious people, blah, 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 how it moved into institutional care, and how it moved from institutional care back into the community. Every single research you pick has a history around it. So when you do a very detailed literature review, it will help you to situate your research within the historical context that you're working in. And so your literature review should be able to help you to describe or discuss series of events which has led to the current research that your work is going to take place in. All right. Maybe during the introduction, perhaps I should have allowed some people mention their research topics. So I could draw on some to use, for example. But any field that you pick, okay, could somebody mention a topic they are working in, for instance? Anybody at all? You can just mention the topic, just an area, the area you are working in. Anybody? Yes, anybody? Karen, you have raised your hand. You can.
Yes, I have. Initially, I wasn't hearing anything. I thought it was from my phone. Then I was working on stammering and then listener perception.
Okay,
so
thank you.
How listener perception may be influenced by stammering disclosure.
Okay, thank you very much. So I understand that when people stammer and they have to engage in a public place, will they let people know ahead whether they stammer or they will keep it inside? So will that also be influenced by the people around? I guess that's what your study is about. So there's a whole idea of the history around public perception of stammering. There's a history to it. If you've done a critical literature review at the doctorate level, we should be able to know how research started within this field, how it progressed, which events even led to this particular research area, and where has research got into. So you have to understand at the doctorate level, your literature review should give us a historical context of your study, so that when people read your work, even though you'll be a master of the work, they can still follow your discussion and you can walk them through the history, where it started from, where it is now. And then also, the history should also lead you into how knowledge has progressed. All right. Some fields came up with certain knowledge systems. At a point, they abandoned them and they use different terminologies. And so for instance, if you are doing any research on ethnic identity, whether ethnicity and those kinds of research area, you can't talk about that without ever raising the issue about tribalism, because at a point, the key concept there was tribalism. Your tribe. At a point, the concept tribe was dropped. And then they came up with ethnicity. Why was it dropped? Why was ethnicity used? So you have to also let people know how knowledge within your field has progressed, whether perspectives have changed within this space, and a whole lot of other things. And so you have to know that the first purpose your literature review should establish is a historical context to your study. And so as part of the historical accounts, differences in interpretation of events, policies, and research findings should also be made clear when you are doing your write-up. And usually the historical context, for instance, is given when you are writing background to your study. So you understand when I say that literature review sometimes can have one chapter, but the literature review is found in every chapter of your work. So if you've done a very good literature review and you are writing a background to your study, you can take your readers through a quick historical journey through the research so that they will be able to understand the background where your work is coming from. Apart from satisfying historical context, your work should also cover contemporary context, right? The literature review should raise current topical debates in your field. If you don't expose people to the current topical debates in your field, then your work has no space, because you are going to research in a certain field. We have to know what its history has been, but we also need to know what its present is, and whether its present is divided along maybe two main perspectives, or three main perspectives, or four main perspectives, or there's just a single perspective. We need to know. If currently there are three ways of looking at your issues, we have to know. And you have to let us know which of the perspectives you are going to use and why you are going to use those perspectives. If I were to use my research that I did, for example, I said I work in community mental health. The current debate now takes two different things. Is it that mental health services or mental health institutions should be provided within communities? Or is it that we should create a broader community context that promotes mental health? These are the two main perspectives, contemporary perspectives within that field. And my work, I situated my work in the latter, creating the broader community context and not just providing mental health personnel and institutions within communities. So you have to let us know what are the current perspectives and where does your work sit in. Now, the current perspectives will be very significant, because when you start discussing the significance of your work and the justification for your work, you are going to situate it within this contemporary context and why your work matters. And so you have to understand that your literature review should also create a very strong contemporary context for your readers. Your literature review should also provide your readers with a theoretical context. Usually, every field has different theories that work there. When you do a very in-depth literature review, when your process is rigorous enough, you will be able to uncover all theories within the field. I wouldn't even say some of the theories. At the doctorate level, you would have your literature review should reveal to you all the theories within the field and what each of the theories do. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to use all the theories, but you are going to be, your literature review should expose the key theories in your field and what their theoretical or philosophical stance are. So if there are 6 key theoretical diversions, or theoretical perspectives, or if there are 4 theoretical perspectives, there are 5, it will you have to know from your literature review. And once we've done that, of course, you'll have to narrow in on the theories that you intend to draw on. But if the theories you are going to use has competition, if let's say there are 6 key theories that people always use within your field, but 2 of them are always have competing views. In that case, you have to raise the competing views. All right. So, for example, there's this research field called social capital. And at the moment, social capital theory is being influenced by 3 key theorists. All right. One theorist who approached social capital as a resource for fighting for political power. Another that sees social capital as a group of people coming together and joining resources together to better themselves. There's a third argument, a third theoretical perspective that talk about trying to create a strong link between marginalized people and powerful people within societies. So there are 3 different theoretical angles. And you will have to decide which theoretical angle you're going to use and why you're going to use it. If your literature review, if the process of your literature review was strong enough, you would have to uncover all these things at the doctorate level. And then the next thing that your literature review should let people know is what we call the conceptual context. Okay, conceptual context. Every research is built around concepts. So your literature review, if the process is rigorous enough, the literature review should expose all the concepts that you are going to use to build your study. The concepts can be anything like somebody mentioned, using stammering, listener perception. All of these are concepts. Within that field of research, how are these concepts being defined? Okay, how is stammering being defined? Are there other concepts that are used in synonymous to stammering? What is public listener perception? How is it being defined? What are there different ways that these things are being defined? And the concepts can also be even now. So for instance, if you are doing research and you say you are using social workers, who is a social worker? If you're doing research and you say you are researching diabetes, diabetes is a concept. How are these concepts defined? Because you realize that the research will talk about type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and they explain all of these. If you say you are dealing with employees, how are you defining employees? Or if you say you are dealing with students, how are you defining students? Because now we have various categories of students: regular students, sandwich students, distance students, online students. How are these terms being defined? All right. And so the idea is that you don't have to assume common understanding of the meanings of your words. Usually when you pick a field of research and you are doing it, you think, oh, but this thing is easy to understand. Academic performance, I'm doing academic performance, it's easy to understand. I'm doing stammering, everybody knows stammering. I'm doing community mental health, nobody knows. All right, nobody knows. The fact that you've read that field and you know doesn't mean everybody knows. You have to let us know how these terms are being defined and how you yourself, you are going to use them and how you are going to define them. It is very, very important that you deal with concepts when you're doing literature review. And then you're also going to be dealing with empirical context. Empirical context, this is where you're going to talk about what different studies have conducted and what they have found. Those are empirical contexts. I mean, later on, the subsequent presentation will touch on different academic materials, and you will understand what empirical study is. Empirical study is those that have collected data, they have analyzed, and they have found, they have gotten their findings. Now, it's not enough to say, I read this person found this person found that. You have to do a lot of probing. You have to do methodological probe, you have to probe theoretically, you have to probe philosophically, you have to probe contextually. You even have to probe their interpretation. So if they've done their research and they say more women report depression than men. How are they interpreting it? Are they trying to suggest that women are emotional? That's why this is happening. Are they trying to say that women are weak? That's why this is happening. Or are they saying that, oh, the culture allows women to expose their emotions? Or how are they interpreting their findings? Do you agree with their interpretation or you disagree with their interpretation? All of these things will help you to come up with limitations and the gaps within the studies that you use. And also that it will help you yourself to know how your study is going to either extend these studies you have read, or how your study is going to challenge these studies that you have read. And so if you just focus on telling us the findings, at the PhD level, that is not acceptable at all. Tell us the findings, tell us how the methodology could be contributing the findings, tell us how the theory or the philosophy could be contributed to the findings, tell us how the researchers are interpreting the findings and whether you agree or you disagree, and what your disagreement is and what the limitations are. Then the last thing that your literature review process is going to help you to do is what I call problem justification. And this issue comes up when you are writing your problem statements, all right? You can't write a problem statement when you have not done in-depth literature review, because the literature review will give you all the supporting evidence to say this is a problem, all the evidence you need. So whether you have found gaps in previous empirical studies, whether they are theoretical gaps, whether they are philosophical gaps, whether they are interpretation gaps, these are going to provide you the evidence to be able to write a very strong problem justification or problem statement. So it helps you to find gaps. But you also have to understand that just because you have found a gap in research doesn't mean that it is important to do that research. A lot of the time when people write at the PhD level, when people write gaps, you see, this thing has been done, this thing has been done, but there are limited studies in that area or limited studies in this. At the PhD level, that is not enough. The fact that there are gaps is not a good justification for you to do your study. The point is, do you have enough evidence to show why the gaps needs to be filled? Do you have good reasons to show that these gaps are creating problems? And can you articulate the problems in very, very succinct ways? The fact that different studies haven't looked at this thing, so there's a gap here. What problem is the gap creating? If the gap is not creating any problem, why are you going to do the research? Don't waste our time. But if the gap is creating problem, then you have a reason to fill that gap. And you should be able to point out in clear and certain terms that when the gaps are filled, when my study helps to fill this gap, this is the importance we are going to get. This is the significance that we are going to get as a people. All right. So if all you are looking for in your literature review, your problem statement is the gaps, it's not going to be enough. All right. As you do your literature review, you are looking for the gaps. But more importantly, you are looking for the problems being created by the gaps. Let me give you an example. If you are in a big room and there's a main gate to that door, and maybe one door in that big room is spoiled and the lock is spoiled, perhaps we may not be concerned because nobody will get access into the main door anyway to go and enter the one door that is locked up or that is spoiled. But if a window is spoiled, perhaps somebody can climb the window and get into the building. So there are some gaps that can be left alone, can leave some gaps alone, and nothing, we won't lose anything as a people. But there are certain gaps, no matter how small it is, they create very huge problem. So when you say you are interested in listener perception and stammering disclosure, and you say we have found gaps that some studies have not been conducted in Ghana. The fact that studies have not been conducted in Ghana in itself isn't enough. What are we losing as a people because we haven't conducted the study in Ghana? When we do conduct the study in Ghana, what do we stand to gain as a people? All right, that will help you to let people know the significance of your work. So if you embark on a doctoral thesis and you haven't done a very thorough literature review, I'm wondering how you will write a strong introductory chapter. Because your introductory chapter is just going to be, perhaps it will sound like a textbook. You can't even have evidence to draw to make certain arguments in your introductory chapter. And so I always, when I work with people or when I supervise work, I after your proposal is done, I tell you, do your literature review first. Do your literature review, write up your literature review, and your literature review will now inform how you write your introduction, how you write a strong background to your study, a strong problem statement, and a strong justification from your work. And so these are the things that at the PhD level, your literature review, the process should help you to achieve. So at this point, I will end here for this first part and ask that if any of you have questions, we can discuss. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I wanted to know, Dr. Joe was made mention of theories, competing theories. So I wanted to know if I'm writing a research and there are some competing theories, which, let's say, for instance, he made mention of social capital theory, where it may imply certain things, different areas, and what they may imply may differ. Am I supposed to state what all those things related to social capital is saying, or I should just go straight to mention how it's related to my work and my field of study? Thank you.
Okay, Karen, once you meet competing theories, you have to discuss what the theories in depth, say what the propositions of this is, say what the strength of this theory, the weaknesses of this theory, say the second one, the strength, the weaknesses, and pick which one you are going to use. But more importantly, why you think what that particular one you are picking is relevant. Maybe contextual. Maybe let's take, for instance, the field you mentioned, stammering. Children stammer, adults stammer. Perhaps there could be one theory that could be well suited for children. There could be one theory that could be well suited for adults, but perhaps that has not been looked at. So you can point out these theories, and then you can make an argument that the nature of this theory and the proposition, it appears to work very well for children, among children. This one also appears to work very well among adults. So per the study, your population you are going to look at, you are going to use this. And so once you found competing theories, you don't leave it out. You have to bring out the competition and why you are going to stick with one and not the other. It is very, very important. Okay, Lavina, you had your hand up.
Thank you very much, Dr. AJ. So, and thank you for the presentation. In your exposition on the literature review, you talked about different components, but we also know that the thesis also has clear-cut components. So in synthesizing all these, how do you delineate what goes under conceptual, what goes under the pure literature, what goes to the background, just so that you don't kind of muddy the waters with all the varying components that is expected to come out of your write-up? Thank you.
Okay, Lavina, that's a very good question. As part of this training, we'll do a module that will look at how you structure your literature review. So what aspect goes to your theory, what aspects go to conceptual, what aspects go to empirical, what aspect go to rationalization, what aspect go to justification. So we'll address all of that. And so I will leave the question for now until we tackle that, because we'll look at how to structure, how to structure literature review. Is that okay?
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
All right, sure. Rachel, you had your hand up.
Yes, please. I had wanted, I think it's kind of related to the question Lavina asked. I wanted to find out when you are writing your literature, so do you arrange it in the way you have given us, like the historical, the contemporary, the empirical? Does it have to follow that sequence when you're writing up the literature review chapter? Thank you.
All right. Okay. So it does not necessarily need to focus the sequence I have used, as in historical, contextual, empirical. No. What I'm telling you is that in the process of doing your literature review, these are the critical things you should be paying attention to. When you've gathered your information, then you begin to structure the information in a way that you're able to tell the story. But when your story is done being told, we will understand the historical context of your work. We will understand the empirical context, the conceptual context. But then again, we'll do structuring literature review. So I'm sure we'll address that as well.
Thank you.
All right. So with no further question, I'll end my presentation on this module here. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Ajay, for the presentation. We now take the next presentation. All right, so I'm inviting Dr. Nti to take us through types of academic materials. So Dr. Nti, take over.
Hello, thank you. Please, can you hear my voice?
Yeah, Dr. Nti, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, moderator.
Please, let me say this before you continue, Doc. You have to tackle the presentation 2 and then 3 continuously. So you do that for us.
Okay.
Thank you so much. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. J, for the introduction and the presentation about how to go about the literature review. It's very important as researchers to get things right so far as the literature review is concerned. I usually tell students that don't think about your chapter 1, don't think about your chapter 3. Think about your literature review. Yeah. By the way, my name is Dr. Nti. I'll be sharing my screen. Okay. My name is Dr. Nicholas Nti. I'm management consultant, researcher, and a lecturer. And I'm happy to discuss with you about academic materials. Usually when you are reviewing papers, you come across certain things that students try to put so many materials in their studies that at the end of the day, you ask yourself, where did they even get those materials from? But I see that sometimes also it's not easy to blame students for doing those kind of things, especially if they don't get the necessary training or they don't do further research by themselves to get to know certain things. So this afternoon, I will be looking into academic materials. I set out with the 2 main objectives for our discussion. That will be, the first one is to understand and evaluate what sources before we can consider that something is an academic materials, what qualifies it to be. So, and then we'll be able to identify different types of academic materials. That will be the first part of my presentation. And then the second part, when we reach there, I will let you know the objectives also. So the first part is that, how do we even
Hello, Doc.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but can you slideshow so that it's bigger on the screen?
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is it okay now?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, okay, good. So in terms of evaluating the source or understanding the source of materials, I usually consider certain things. The first one is that the material that you want to even use for your studies, who is the authority over there? What makes the author an authority on this subject? So if you are doing a research, if you are even before you start reading a research material or books or whatever, you need to assess the authority, the person. What credentials is the person bringing on board, his or her experiences? And then even is there a way to contact the author? In what publication or website does the article appear? Who is responsible for the information presented? Is the publication peer review or scholarly? Is the material taken from what sources fully credited? So when you look at the authority for whatever material that you are getting, the first assessment is that the authority of the person who name or who endorse that word material. For instance, if it is a book, you will see that the book has a publisher. Is the which company published that book? If it is a journal article, you see that there is a name of an author there, and there is the publisher who published that word, that journal. So once you get those authority right, then it tells you that at least you are on the right track. And the next one is that you need to also find out the scope, coverage, and relevance of that material. Because in terms of academic materials, you don't just pick it, read it, and then that is that. Because sometimes if you look at the scope, the coverage, and the relevance, is the material even relevant to whatever study you are doing? There are a whole lot of materials over there. Some of them may not be necessarily for the field you are or the topic you are working on. So we need to look at the intended audience for that material. So if you are included in that intended audience or your study is included, then it's a good way to go about it. And then the level, is it even appropriate for the dissertation or the thesis that you are writing? That is also another critical issue you need to consider. For instance, if you are doing a research, you want to get materials, and then the journals you'll be getting, all of them are not peer-reviewed journals, then it tells you that although those materials are very helpful, their names and everything, but is it appropriate for your studies? Or another thing is that you just search through the internet and then you find the materials over there, and then you just want to use those kind of website or something like that. And then another thing is that you need to look at what we call the time period, okay? Sometimes when people are doing studies, they tend to think that, oh, I can use any materials for that. Yes, we have some studies that maybe if you are doing, as Dr. J mentioned, social capital theory, at least we have some scholars in the field that somebody like Putnam, you cannot just use all the current materials without his material, or Boudreau. You need to go back to get those things. But other than the key people over there, any other materials you are using, you need to look at the time period. And then another thing is that the geographical area where the material is even covering, because some studies may be relevant in other jurisdictions, but if you bring it within your own jurisdictions, that may not fit. And then, is this information you are looking for, is it a subset of a more comprehensive source? So once you are looking at the sources, you need to look at it at the information. If it is a subset of more comprehensive source, then you need to go further and search for those things. And then another thing is that when you are looking at sources, you have to also find out biases and what accuracies, because as researchers, sometimes not all materials are at least scholarly material that you can use for your studies. Some maybe a company paid somebody to do a studies for them purposely to promote their product or their services. If you just pick up this material and then you think that the conclusions and everything are good for your studies, you may find yourself wanting. Or is it the opinion that somebody is expressing? Or is it a form of propaganda tool the person is using those information for? You need to also be able to evaluate those kind of things. And then apart from that, look at the material itself. Is the information over there, is it accurate? Did the person take length and other things to ensure that there are no biases or something? And then nowadays also there are issues that we need to be very careful in terms of cultural, political, religious biases. If you are searching for materials and you are evaluating materials, you need to also be cautious about it, because not any academic material that you can just pick it and use. Some materials, people just write it to at least to attack some specific cultural group or those with different political view or religious affiliation. So you need to assess, evaluate all these things to make sure that those materials are not full of biases and inaccuracies. And another thing is that you look at the timelines and then the currencies. How recent is the information? Some field, if you are doing research, you need to ensure that you are always using current materials. For instance, the study you are trying to be part of your studies, is it about 10 years ago that the study was conducted, 15 years ago, 20 years ago? In some educational institutions, they try to give some timeline in the sense that they can even limit you that your materials must be from this period up to the current period. So you need to take note of that. If your institution has those kind of policies and you go beyond it, at the end of the day, your references and your citations will not be appropriate, and it will not meet the objectives of your studies. Okay. And then another thing is you need to also look at the quality of the work that you have in terms of assessing it, in terms of the research methodologies, in terms of information, how it is written, and then how the whole study is organized. And then look at the author. Is the author agreeing or disagreeing with the majority of other scholars in within that discipline? Because if the author is agreeing with them, why is the author doing that? Why is the author not disagreeing with them? You need to also assess those things and find out that the material you are using, you have a quality material. And then another issue that you need to be very careful also is about commercialization. Sometimes people are commissioned to do certain kind of studies in order to promote a product or even a philosophical views or religious views of other people. And nowadays it's very common that there are institutions or there are individuals with their personal interest. So a field that you may think, say, oh, this studies is a neutral field. Before you go there, assess the materials you are getting. Once you're able to assess those materials, you see, say, the field is full of hidden agendas, and you don't need to fall into those kind of temptations. So examine the material to see if the study was commissioned by maybe a company or an institution. Did the author even bother to disclose those things? If the author bothered to disclose it, then that is good. Or if it is even a website that you visited and you find an article over there, do a basic background research about that website and see that is the website being a form of a tool that others are using to propagate their own agenda. Okay, so once we get into the background of evaluating materials. That is very important. Now we need to look at what we call academic material. So you have the tools, we have the authority, you have the the quality of the material, commercialization, if it is free of a timeline and other things. So let's look at academic materials, material that we can depend on when we are doing our studies, okay? The first one is, I think most of us are aware of scholarly publication, that is journals. And journals contains ratings, article written by experts in a particular field. So if your field, you are coming from maybe medicine, there are articles and journals, there are so many publications over there, okay? If you are coming from psychology, you'll be able to get journals that are within that categories. And then because these journals are written by experts, they have a specific purpose or intended audience. And then these articles are generally report on original research or case studies. We will take it, is it a case study or whatever? And then you need to also look at that the journal you are using, is it a peer reviewed or refereed? Because sometimes you may do a studies and almost 90% of the articles or the journals the person used are coming from predatory journals. Is that clear? And most of the time, if it goes for external review and then the reviewers are very cautious about it, that alone can become a problem. So if you come across a journal, for you to see that, is this journal even relevant or is it peer reviewed? Just even cross-check it with some of the basic database like Scopus, like Dwaj and all those database. If you check it and then the journal is indexed in Scopus or SSEI, then you see that at least this journal has a bit of credibilities, okay? And then another thing about the journal article that they are written by and for faculty, researchers, and other experts. So the language and everything suits that particular field. And it will help you once you are doing your studies. Because, for instance, if you belong to management and you are doing studies about any, maybe, let's say, employee retention, you are doing studies about employees' behavior, performance, there are certain terminologies over there that you need to have them. And these journals help you to get into those kind of things. And when you look at journals, some journals go into what we call systematic reviews. So you will see, say, the journal has a specific research question. And while they have the research question, they collect data, summarize all the data and everything, and for the studies. So if the journal is about systematic review, just the normal research that we usually come across, normal articles, you see that say it has stated objectives with predefined eligibility criteria for studies, explicit and reproducible methodology. It has a clear methodology that it uses, and then other basic things that we can find about any scholastic materials. And then apart from systematic reviews, that studies you look into, there are another areas when you are downloading journals for your studies that will be very important: narrative synthesis and meta analysis. So if you are downloading journals, the title, once you look at the title itself, you'll be able to see that is this studies doing narrative synthesis? As Dr. Franz Ajay mentioned, he said that at the first degree level or master's degree level, it's easy to just say, quote one researcher, so and so did these studies about this and that, this person did this and that. But when you are at the PhD level, it's better to move into the area of synthesis. So that is why you need journals or studies that are into what, whether narrative synthesis or meta what analysis, because when a study is a meta-analysis studies, it tries to at least bring all the individual studies within a specific field and then try to use statistical tools to what, to assess them. And this one will help you to see that, say, maybe this is what is happening within this field, and it will guide you in terms of your what, of your studies. Or if you are in qualitative side, you can also look at what, narrative synthesis. And this one also, they just try to use the qualitative means without depending on what, on regular statistical tools to assess all what materials. So at this level, at the PhD level, it's better to, when you are searching for journals, articles that you are reading, it's better if you be able to get hold of some of these articles. It's the article that deals with what, meta-analysis or narrative what, synthesis, because it gives you clear cut where the field is what is going. So if you have that clear cut, it will also shape the study that you are what you are doing. Okay, so that is about what the journals. And aside from the journals, we have other sources. That is, we have something like the news and magazines that can also be a part of academic what, material for our studies. The one thing about the news and magazines is that it is easy to come across those kind of what, those kind of things. News, we read the newspaper, you have newspapers everywhere. And then, so it usually become like a starting point. If something is in you have interest in something, you just go there to just read the news, what is happening. And then that can even form the thing that you want to what you study. For instance, currently what is happening in Ghana here, you read the news, you find about e-levy, you find about all those issues. So if you are in the field of what, economics, or in the field, in other field that you are more inclined, it just gives you the starting point of even the topics or what you want to what, work around. So news and magazines are very what, important. And usually news and magazines, professionals write it, although it is not refereed as the way peer-reviewed journals go into regulars what, regulars refereed. But this one, at least the editorial processes over there do some basic word fact check. So this can be one of your starting points when you are developing interest. And authors usually express their own argument, opinion, and analysis of what, of issues over there. So news and magazines are very important source that you can also use in terms of what, when you are doing your studies. Okay. And another thing about another source that we can use also are professional and trade word sources. So we have other sources that are professional publications. These are also part of what, academic what, materials. Why do you need this kind of what, sources? Because for you to go purely into academic research, you need to also know what the other industry professionals are saying about the topic you are working on. It may not be coming from a peer-reviewed journal, but these professional and trade writings are also very important. They give some relevant information. For instance, in a specific field, if you are a social worker, you may get different materials within that field. And this can also be a form of important area. And these ones also usually talk about the new things that is happening within the field where you belong to. Because if you look at certain things like maybe academic writings, peer-reviewed journal, it takes months and months before even some of the publication will be coming out. But professional and trade sources, they usually come up with what? With data and information, current trends within that field. So it will also help you read those things, and it will shape the kind of studies you are doing. Okay, and then at least the popular ones that we know are the books and book chapters. These academic materials, I think every student, if you ask the person, oh, I know this book, I know that book. So the old one that we know, the traditional book that we know is very important. Why book is very important? Because books go, so if you get some of the books, it go deeper. For instance, if you want to do something about maybe human resource, and you get a book coming from Armstrong, Armstrong book will treat anything that you want to know about human resource. Or you get Peter Drucker's book, you get everything you want to know about what? About management, as compared to what? To journal, whereby the researcher will decide to settle on a specific issues and talk about what? That issue. Okay, so that is the one advantage about what? Book. And then apart from that, we have what we call conference proceedings. And conference proceedings are also very important because the conference proceedings help us to at least to be able to know what are the issues happening within our field of work studies. That is why in most institutions, if you are a PhD candidate, they will try to encourage you to always attend different world conferences, because once you go over there, that is where new ideas coming within a certain field, that is the place you usually meet them. So when you are doing your research and you are searching for materials, also look for conference world proceedings that are very important, because new ideas that are coming in, you may be able to find them within that conference world proceedings. Sometimes idea that you may not find it within the actual journal section, you may even find it in the conference proceedings. And it is the first publication of what? Research, and later on you find it in other scholarly publications. Okay, and conference proceedings, they have many databases that you'll be able to get those conference proceedings from. Okay. And then another thing, another academic materials are government documents, because for instance, in Ghana here, we have a Ghana Statistical Authority, and Ghana Statistical, every 10 years, they conduct population census and all those things. And these government documents are very important. The government statistician, they come out, they give those kind of information. Ministry of Information, they publish certain things. Other departments also, they publish data. Why do you need these kind of documents? Because for instance, your research methodology area, it will come to the time that even you need to tell us the population where you are working. The study that you are working, what is the total population? For instance, you are doing a study in Ashanti region. What is even the total population if you are working on teenagers or youth or adult, total population and everything. And this data, you cannot easily get it anywhere. Most of the time, you need to fall on government release documents. So that is also another great source of academic materials. And then another thing that we also need to know is about theses and dissertations. If you are starting your PhD dissertation writing, the first place you need to go is your school, your institution, library, to check theses and dissertation studies that have been done within the field where you find yourself. If you're able to read some of these papers there, you see that you may come across certain line that most of them are even given that future researchers should look at this area. Future researchers should look at that area. Future researchers should do that. And these things become a stepping stone for you, because the fact that these studies are recommending these things, it tells you, say, you have something to work on. So one of the things that you need to always keep in mind is that the school, the institutional library are there, and you find theses, dissertation sections. Go there, at least rummaging through all those materials, and you'll be able to see what is happening, what the institution itself, what they have done before. Sometimes even you may select a topic and the topic is, there may be almost 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 students who have done the same studies in your institution. So if the institution is very critical, immediately you submit your proposal, they will just go to their database and see that, oh, this is not a news in this institution anymore. So that is why it's very important to look into that area. So I will end here. If you have any questions about academic materials, then we can ask before we move to our next topic. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much, Dr. Nti. Please, like he said, if you have any question, you can raise up your hand and then you'll be called to ask. Thank you.
Is there any questions or clarifications before we proceed to our next topic?
Oh, I guess you can continue. I don't think there's a question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next, I'm trying to exit from okay. Please, 1 or 2 minutes, okay? Stop sharing, okay. Okay, then let me. Okay, our next discussion will be looking into systematic literature search. So this time you have your topic, you have been able to identify the materials you may need for your studies and everything. The question you ask yourself is that if you go to today, information is everywhere, especially because of the internet and everything, and a whole lot of database and everything. So if you go there, how do you structure your search so that you don't throw yourself overboard? Because what usually happens is that searching for literature material, somebody can spend almost 1 month, 2 months, and still the person is not getting whatever the person is looking for. So this lecture will be aiming to see how best we can structure our lecture, our search in such a way that it will target the specific things we are looking for when you visit any database or any use even ordinary web browser or something like that. Okay, so the basic objectives is that we conduct a systematic literature search and then how you document the search word processes. Okay. So when you talk about systematic literature search, we are looking at how researcher, you are able to organize and tackle the search processes in a structured and pre-planned manner. So what you do is that before you start your studies, you need to plan how you'll be going about your literature search, because that is very important. And for you to do that, you need to understand basic things like search terms. What are terminologies you need for you to even be able to get the materials you are using for? And then the database where you need to even get those materials from. We are lucky that nowadays, most of the universities are online. They have their online database or online library system whereby you can just pop in anywhere you are, visit your school online, and then you just get access to their database and you do the searching. But you may have the database, all right, but how do you go about what? about the section. So that is very key issues. So in terms of going about in terms of going about the section, some institutions even require their students that for you to even present your literature or your studies, you need to give us the document, how you did or you came about your literature search. So if your institution is one of those groups, then I'll walk through as fast as possible. But some institutions also, they don't do anything like that. So we look into the issue of documenting the search process. Some institution may require you to even document it for you. When you are meeting your supervisor, you need to show the processes and everything. But some institutions also, they don't do that. So if your institution require, then this will be the basic thing that we need to do. For instance, if you are using electronic database searches, then the description is supposed to be, you need to be able to tell them the name of the database, and then the name of the database system, that the provider, and the date when you did the search, and the years covered by the search. So you need to be able to document those things. And another thing is that you need to even be able to provide a list of journal full title in a alphabetical order. That will be able to indicate the earliest month and year search together with the last month and year search, and then any missing journals issues or something like that. This one is also very important when you are describing your journal hand search. So for now, or another issue is that even in terms of search for conference proceedings, if you visited the database and you came up with conference proceedings, you need to be able to provide the details. So for instance, proceedings, you need to be able to give a substantive use, individual behavior, social interactions, and everything. So this procedure, or if you have a proceedings whereby there is not a separate title, then you just give a general overview over it. That is maybe international meeting on economics or social science or health in which country, within which period. That one you need to be able to document it. And then another thing is that if the proceedings were even published in a you need to be able to let us know which journal. So proceedings of maybe CIS, scientific conference, tobacco or health or external problem, new challenges, year, month, and then whoever came up with that one. And then another thing is that if you use internet sources also for your searchings, this is how you also document it. So you report the website, the URL, and then the date search and any specific session search. That one is also very important. For instance, the Action for Smoking and Health website or search on specific date using on what specific search engine with single search items. Maybe these are the things you need to document. That is if your institution require you to do that. Okay. So another ones, if your institution don't require, then those things are not necessary. For now, what we need to look at it is how do we tailor our search in a search engine so that it gives us the appropriate results that we need to use for our studies. So for instance, you have your topic, all right, or maybe your research question. How do you go about search? What keywords do you need to use? Do you need to type in the whole research question over there into the browser or something like that? Most of the time, we use maybe Google Chrome or whatever Google web browser to search for whatever information. But the thing is that some of the browsers or some of the database, the normal search that we use, you cannot get the materials you are using, you are looking for. Therefore, we need to devise a means that will help us to get what we are looking for. So we'll be discussing about how to tailor your search in such a way that it gives you the accurate results, and it will also save you what? Time. Okay, so the first thing is that when you are doing your research, or when you are searching any database for any articles or any reading materials, there are some keywords you to even bother yourself to type it into the search engine. Okay, for instance, if your topic is the impact of maybe drinking on on impact of drinking on marriage issue, something, there is nothing, you don't need you don't need the impact, you don't need all those things. There are certain keywords, minor words, that don't bother yourself to tap it into the search word engine. Or another thing is that prepositions, articles, you don't need prepositions, and verb phrases also, you don't need to do that. So what you need to do is that you limit the use of verbs. Certain verbs, you need to limit the use of certain verbs and certain adjectives, and just go straight. Look at for the keyword, the keywords. Let's look at the example. The question, our question is that games increase the chance that the children will be violent. This is our research question, okay? Does playing video games increase the chance that children will be violent? So if you want to get materials, journal articles about this topic, what should we do for us to be able to get this one? One way that most people do is that they will just copy the whole question and then put it in a search engine, thinking that it will give them the results. The normal Google Chrome that we use, or Google search, the way it behaves is different from when you are doing database search. I will give you some examples of database. For instance, if you are using Google Scholar as a database, it has a different characteristics altogether. Or maybe your school library, you have built your own online database and you are using that one. If you type in the whole statement like this, you will not be able to get anything. So what you need to do is that based on your question over there, you need to start canceling certain words, remove certain words. So the first thing, certain words like does, we don't need it. The chance that, we don't need those things. Will and be, we don't need those words, because at the end of the day, those words are not relevant for the search engine or for the database to be able to output whatever you are looking for. So if you cancel those things, those articles and those verbs and those modals from it, you come out with playing. You have what we call playing video games increase children violent. You see that, say you have been able to sort it out. It's left with playing video games increase children violent. Okay, so that limit it. And then the next question is that even the word playing, do we even need to add playing to it? No, you don't need the playing as a word to also as part of your search engine. So what you need to do is that you can also remove the playing from it, and then you get video games increase children violent. Okay, video games increase children violent. So the next one that we can sort it out is the word increase. Do we need to put that word over there? Because we know that that word is telling us the relationship, okay? But the problem is that immediately you put the word increase over there, you are telling the database to be biased in such a way that you are telling the database to go into certain direction. So any article that has the word decrease, the database will never output them for you. So what it will tell you is that all the articles you'll be getting from the database will be articles that look at how video games increase children violent or something that becomes like that. and you will not be able to get the opposing views articles for you to be able to what? To do your proper search. So you need to also cancel out the word what? Increase. So our research question, does playing video games increase the chance that children will be violent? We will be able to limit the words up to only 3 words. The first one is video games, violence, children. You see, that is what they are. These are the key words that we need. And these keywords are the words we need to what? To input in our database. That is very important. So these keywords, you input them in your database, and it will help you to what? To be able to get the data that you want. But another question that you need to ask yourself is that if you limit ourselves to these keywords alone, we will not be able to also to achieve much. So we need to go further, because there are some words that definitely somebody may use the synonyms of those words in terms of what? Writing scholastic work, doing scholastic research. So words like video games, violent, children, they have some synonyms that if you don't go in for those synonyms and then try to use those synonyms also to search it, you will not be able to get a comprehensive research what material you are looking for. So let's look at a word like what? Children. You may even find a studies that talks about what? Youth. And if you are doing a video games, impact of video games on behavior among children, you don't need to ignore youth also. Somebody may use youth. And before you realize, when you read it, the way the person define it, you see that they are looking into the area of what? Children. So what we are saying is that the rest of the keywords that you have come across, you need to search for the synonyms of those keywords, and it will help you to do your what? Your search, okay? So these are some of the things. Violence, you can look at aggression, cruelty, sadism, kids, child, teenagers, youth, video games, media, Call of Duty, shooting games. Some people may be doing those kind of studies with this kind of what? Words. So if you have this kind of words and you start playing around in the database, you'll be able to get what you are what you are looking for. So the next question is that, okay, now we have our keywords already. We know that children, violence, video game are our keywords, or youth, aggression, and then media are our keywords, or kids, violence, video game are our keywords. How do we go about inputting those keywords in our database? So this one brings us to our next issues about what we call what? Boolean what? Operators. Some of you who are into IT, I think you are more familiar with Booleans or operators, or those of you who are doing mathematics as your what? As your major, you are familiar with, you are familiar with those keywords. So when you talk about the Boolean operators, we want to be what? Search what? Survey. We want to be able to limit our search in such a way that within the shortest possible time, we'll be able to do much. We'll be able to what? To get a lot from our search activities. So we need to use this kind of operators, connect them to certain kind of words that we have what? Identify, and it will be able to help us. So when you are doing database search, is a bit different from Google search, as I told you before. So let's look at some of the examples of the database. These are examples. We have sites here: Google Scholar, Quandl, Web of Sciences, IEEE Explorer. We have Science Index that is run by EBSCOhost. And then we have the Duage also website. These are databases whereby you can get scholastic materials. And these databases are very important because it helps you to get the article that you are looking for within the shortest possible time for you to do your studies. So once you know your database, what are the Boolean operators do we need that will help us to what? To do our search very fast. The first one, the key Boolean operators, we have the word called and, or, and not. These are the three key words that we can use, the Boolean operator that we can use to search for whatever we are looking for. In mathematics, you see, said those mathematicians, you have the same things, maybe plus, minus, and all those things. This one, but in terms of search, we are using it in search engine. We need to look into what? And, or, and not. These are the key Boolean operators that we need for our search. So the first one is the word and. Please, I want us to try this. So I want to post this one in our, let me stop the sharing and post this website over there so that we use this, we do the normal search and then we use the Boolean search for us to know the difference between the two, okay? So let me post this one here, this website, the database website of this 1 minute, let me post this one so that those of you who want to practice it as we are going along, you can do that, okay? Okay. This is the website. So you can log into that website. It's a database run by what? CiteShare, it's academic database. If you are still worrying how you should download your research materials and everything, if you go to that database, you'll be able to get a lot of scholastic studies over there. So let's continue. So what we are saying is that once we have those keywords, what we need to do now is use those keywords for our search. That is what we are going to do now. We have our keywords. So for instance, our first keyword is what? And then we saw that based on our research question, we identified children, violence, video game, okay? So if you go to that, if you click on the link and then you put there, the way you put it is that if you write children, then you write the and in capital, student, and then violence, you write the and in capital and the other things. Once you type it over there, what and is telling you is that output the data that I need. The database should give you the data that takes into consideration only articles that have these three keywords. Is that clear with all of you? So for instance, if you are using our old Venn diagram system, you see that you look at the intersection where the three of them intersect. The middle one is where you are looking for. So it will not bring any article where you don't have those keywords. So let's look at it. College and student and test and anxiety. If you do this and you post it into this database, it will give you only articles that have these as part of their keywords over there. And then the thing is that if you compare it to the normal search that we do, like impact of anxiety on college students, okay? If you look at it carefully, you see that if you type this one into the database will give you volumes of data that even you don't need, as compared to when you limit your search. Is there anybody who has tried it to see if it will work? Or let's say we are doing studies about cloning, humans, and ethics. How, in terms of looking at ethics issues in terms of human cloning. And that is our study. So what we need to do is that our keyword is cloning. Then we use and as our connective. humans, and as another connective, and then what? Ethics. So and is one of our what? Boolean operators when we are searching through what? Through the database. And will give only where only articles that has all our keywords inside, okay? And then another Boolean operator is or. 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 So when you talk about or, when you use that operator, you connect two or more similar word concepts. It will broaden your what? Your results, telling the database that any of your search terms can be what? Present in results. So just like it is more like the opposite of what? And, but this time it have to go in, bring everything, anything that the database contains that has any of your keywords over there. So if you want to do a broad database search, whereby you are not specific about certain things, but you want to get materials about college anxiety students, then use the Boolean word or, and that one will help you to get as much as data that you want. So if you like, you can compare the and the or search, and it will help you to see the difference. So we say that the or will bring everything from the database, okay? And then the next one is not. The last one is what? Not. And not is a word, it's an exclusive word. So if you use not, it will go into the database, try to search whatever you are looking for, but the aspect that you don't want it will what? Eliminate, or it will ignore all the people that contains that one. So let's see, say we are doing about human genome cloning system, and then we want to look at cloning in terms of all the animals, how they are using them for the experiment, except sheep. We don't want to have anything about sheep what? Cloning. So what we can do is that in our database, we type in cloning, not sheep. So if you type in cloning, not sheep, it will output all the studies about what? About cloning, but it will remove the word sheep from it. So you will never be able to find studies that deals with what? Sheep. That is also another part that is very important, okay? Any questions or clarification? And then we are now moving to the search order. So we know that these Boolean keywords, we have the and, not, or. If you are using your search engine, the search engine or the database has a search order, the way it would arrange them, okay? The command you give, it has certain kind of logical order in which orders are what? Connected when you are using them, okay? So the first thing that you do is that look at words like what? And. If you use only the Google search engine, only Google search, what you see is that and, anytime you hear the word and, if you type, okay, let me see, it seems like, okay, very good. Can we add both and not? Yes, you can do that. You can play along with all the what? All the Boolean words, okay? Because the and will be able to tell you whatever is within this group, but not the other one, what is excluding, okay? So you can use that one, or you can use and or. That one, you can combine those things and get whatever you are looking for. So what I'm saying is that, please, is the answer clear about what I'm saying? Is that when you are using them in a those Boolean words in a database, all the search engines we have, if you take Google Chrome, if you take Chrome, if you take any search engine, if you type anything, the search engine itself will try to use and to divide the words for you. Okay, so you have to take note of that. So sometimes if you are doing the normal search, you don't see that the words you type in, it will not come like the way you see. If you read the browser where your URL is, it is divided into pieces and over there. Okay, that is how it is. So if you use a combination of and or operators in search engine and close, okay, another question is that, does it matter which keyword you begin with when doing your search? It matters when you are doing the not search, because the not search would take the you get data about maybe children, okay, but not Ghana. Then make sure that the children come first before Ghana. Otherwise, if you put the Ghana first and then not children, it will give you data about Ghana, but not children. So when you are using not, you have to be more careful about it, how you arrange your words, okay? And then if you look at the hierarchies also, the same thing also apply to what? To the hierarchies, because the hierarchies all the time and take precedence over or and not also. So when you are doing that one, you need to know how you arrange them, because the database, that is the way it is being built. It is built. Any questions or clarifications? So what we are saying is that at the end of the day, we don't have much time. The time that we have, let's be efficient and effective in terms of how we search our research materials, because at the end of time is very important in everything that we are doing. If you delay much, if you spend much time on the searching without following the basic principle, the basic Boolean techniques, you will spend most of your time searching for materials, journals, articles, and then you finish. But if you use the Boolean operators and you use some of these databases that are purposely for academic studies, you'll be able to get your materials as soon as possible. So why use Boolean operators? You say that it focuses search, particularly when your topic contains multiple search terms, and then to connect various pieces of information to find exactly what you are looking for. So Boolean operators are very important when you are doing your search, okay? Yeah, and then we move on to the next level. It compares what we call citation mining. Another way of doing search when you are doing your studies, you need to go into what we call citation mining. And citation mining is a term used by expert searchers to describe the act of using citation to locate articles related to a topic. So when you talk about citation mining, you download the paper article that is talking about maybe teenage pregnancy. And what you do is that go to downstairs reference points. If you go to the references of that studies, you'll be able to get current articles the researcher also use in connection with that to that topic. So if you are using that one to search for your data, then we call it that is the way we call it citation mining. So you can also use that strategy to get as much as possible the many literatures you like. And then another thing is that we can use what we call forward search. Forward citation search is a search to find all the articles that cite back to a specific article. So let's try forward citation for us to see. Okay, I want to demonstrate that one for us, forward and backward citation, before we go back, because I think these ones need to be demonstrated for us to see the actual results. So let me stop the sharing I will share my web browser here. Okay. So 1 minute, I will share the web browser. Where is the browser? Okay. Okay, please, can you see the browser? Can you read from my screen, please?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's say I'm doing a search about what? Okay, this is the search I'm looking for. Impact. So let me go to one of the search engines, and then I'll use that one for the demonstration. Okay. Let's say we are in Google Scholar. Okay. So Google Scholar. We located an article, and this is the article we located, okay? So this article is, we are going to use that article to search for other articles that are related to that using the forward and then search. Okay, good. Does social capital affect entrepreneurial intention? Have you seen that one? So if I want to go back to see, I just look at where it is written cited by. Have you all seen cited by? There are 550 who have cited these studies. Okay, so immediately I go there, I can use that technique to get whatever I'm looking for as fast as what possible. That will be my forward search and my what? My backward search. So if I go there and then I click this 500, you see that it has given me all the articles that have cited that word, that studies. Have you seen it? This one was written in what, 2007. And all the 500 articles that have cited these studies, I can go there and then look into those materials and get what? Data for my studies. So it tells you that, say, for me, instead of me to waste time looking for this and that, my study about social capital effects on entrepreneurial intention, I can easily look into cited by these 500 studies, because any study that have cited this particular article is a potential what? Potential materials for my research also. So that is the techniques. Oh, thank you. So that is the technique that you can also what? Use. So if you get this one, you see that you can get a studies that is looking into entrepreneurial intentions, thematic and analysis and everything, and it is cited by 1,000. So if you use this kind of strategy, it will help you to what? To limit the time that you spend in terms of what? Doing your what? Your search, okay? And then let's also try the Boolean search also. The Boolean search technique that I mentioned, so that we can demonstrate it for us to see how best it will help us, okay? In terms of when we are doing our search. Okay, so this is the database of sites here, okay, X. So once we are in their database, for us to search, if you use the normal search system that we know, okay, the normal search is that if I type in impact of anxiety, if I type in the whole words, impact of anxiety on college students, when I click the search, you see, it will give me unnecessary material that I don't even want. I don't need. You see, effect with random assignment, results for I don't need all diversity and higher education theory and impact. I don't need these materials, okay? So for me to go straight to the materials I need, all what I need to do is that, let me use the strategy. And that the strategy is looking into what? Let me use my Boolean techniques. Let me use this one, college and students. College and students and test and anxiety. Let's compare the two and see how best our search can be what? Easier. So if I click, so you see that testing tripartite mode evaluating convergence discriminator of anxiety and depression among scale. Statistics talking about anxiety and female students. Descriptive adult anxiety college student. You see that this one is giving me targeted what? Results as compared to when I do the general what? The general search that I didn't use any operators. So you see that any data that I'm getting here is a data that at least my 3 key terms are among them. And this one will limit the time that I need to spend before I get my materials for whatever studies I want to use it. And then let's look at if you use all also. And for us to see that the all will give us a bigger database for us to search from. Okay. So this one you see it gives us 137 pages. Okay, with this type of search. But let's use all and see how many pages will you be able to get. So you see they all give us almost 253,000 data that we will be able to comb through. So you see the difference between the two. The and will limit our scope. The all will give us the broader scope. So the all will tell us that whatever study that you see, student, college, anxiety, output all of them for me. But if you don't need that, then you need to use and to limit our studies. Or if you use not, let's look at not and see how not will also help us to see. So let's see that maybe here we want only students, not those with anxiety, okay? So students, not anxiety. Okay, you see the way it has come, 205,000 data over there. So you see the database contains a lot of information. If you don't limit it, you will not be able to get what you are looking for. So you see all the data we have here, if you go through one after the other, you see, you will not get anything about anxiety. So this type of strategy help us to be able to work efficiently and effectively to make good use of our time. So if there are any questions or clarification before I will end the discussion. Is there any questions or clarifications? Okay, so these are some of the database in case you want to use for your your studies. Some of the database that is easy for you to get materials from, okay? You don't need to just, let me share that one, and then you don't need to just be in the, don't use Google Chrome or the Google search engine, and then you'll be wasting much time. Go straight to this kind of database and you'll be able to finish as soon as possible. Okay. Okay, so we have Google Scholar is a good database. We have Web of Science. We have IEE Explorer. We have EBSCOhost. We have Dwaj, and then Scopus also is a very good source. Okay, so all those index in this kind of these host database are very good for our studies. So anytime you are doing your studies, if you want to get materials, don't just type it into Google search engine. No, go to this specific database, Scopus, Dwaj, and all these Web of Science database, and search for your materials from there. And they will be able to give you specific materials related to your studies. And these databases are also, most of them are peer review database that they try to at least publish only journals. Over the journals in those databases are mostly peer review data journals. And thank you very much. If you have any questions or clarifications, you can bring. Yeah, most of the database I shared are open database that you can get any whatever topics you are working on in most of those databases. Okay. Yeah. So it's not restricted to only specific areas. For instance, if you take a database like Scopus index a lot of different journals that you can get whatever topic you are working on over there. Any field of studies, you can get it from Scopus. Okay. Okay, good.